Hey guys, how y'all doing? As you can see, we're in the hotel room right now. It's a little bit of a mess, just don't mind that. Just been getting some sleep because I came in pretty late in the night instead. But yeah, as you can see, we are in Kyoto right now. Yeah, okay. Maybe that looks a little too much like Tokyo and can't really tell the difference, but the city itself is fairly different. I just got a place that was not exactly in the center, but relatively centrally located, so that might be why it still looks the same. Anyway, I really didn't want to record the entirety of that previous segment at the store where the pop-up store was happening in, because there were a bunch of people queuing up there. And there was an art gallery outside of the Blue Archive location for a separate art thing, so I didn't want to be too much of a nuisance standing there talking to a camera like this and looking a little bit insane, especially in English, since people might just consider it a nuisance, since especially in Kyoto, there are a little more people who are like that. So I decided to just film this part here. And for the rest of the video itself, I'll probably be filming it at home instead. But yeah, as you can see, I'm testing out the lavalier mic. I bought one ever since the previous video where we did the thing in the karaoke where the sound was a little weird. So I'm just testing it out in part for this video for the sake of future videos as well. Anyway, there isn't really much space behind me to actually put up stuff, so I can't really put up anything. So for the short part of the video that we're going to do here, I guess I could just do this instead. 3 days is quite a lot of time as is. Granted, maybe I would want one more day just to tour the non-Blue Archive related stuff as well, since I didn't really have as much time for that. Though a large part of that is because being the very sane mad lad that I am. That does not sound like a sentence that makes a lot of sense, but I actually did it multiple times just so that I could get a little bit more of the stuff as well, so I could just show it to you guys too. But yeah, for those of you who didn't know, they held a Blue Archive event over in Kyoto. Not just a live stream, but after the live stream, they also had a much longer campaign period, which stretched over the entirety of Golden Week, which is the period where many people in Japan actually get multiple days off of work. Which, to me, at least, it's felt like a pretty cool thing, just due to the fact that, yeah, I'm not gonna... My hand is getting tired. It hasn't been long, but it has been a few days of me running around carrying a huge amount of stuff, so my hand is already a little tired, so just bear with that. But yeah, initially when they didn't actually have a scavenger hunt during the Akiba campaign period after, I was a little bit disappointed, just a little bit. You guys, those of you who have watched my other videos know that I am kind of a little bit of a sucker for stuff like this, since it does let me explore new places for using all of the collab stuff as a reason to get my ass out of the house as well. So you can imagine my surprise when they actually announced one that was going to take place not just in Kyoto, but across the entirety of Kyoto. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that you're going to go into the mountains north of Kyoto and look for a little abandoned hut with an old lady there who's going to give you a stamp. No, I think this takes place in the more city areas of Kyoto. So it actually ended up including many of the very touristy spots within Kyoto, ranging from the Shimogamo shrine in the north all the way down to the Fushimi Inari down in the south, as well as the Arashiyama in the west. Though before we start talking about the collab itself, we need to turn the clock all the way back. I don't know if I'm actually getting the clock effect on the screen to work out right, but we need to go all the way back to just before this, on the 29th when I first went over, because the thing is, this entire campaign, it doesn't start once you get into Kyoto, but when you first take the Shinkansen over. Now, obviously, people would say that, yeah, you could do the backpacky thing and take an 8-hour, 12-hour train ride all the way into Kyoto and it would be cheaper, but what is important to note is that aside from the Kyoto campaign itself, there was also a JR collab, which basically was a collab for people who were planning to go into Kyoto separately from the Kyoto's own collab for Blue Archive. So on the train itself, there isn't really anything all too different, but basically all you really had to do was go onto the website, and you basically had a point on the website where you could access a page, which the interesting thing was that the page would only open up if the train was going fast enough. So the thing with a lot of what happened during this entire collab period is that a lot of it actually used quite a fair bit of location tracking to ensure that you were not trying to cheat your way into getting any of the stuff. So with the train one, you had to sit on the Shinkansen and it would basically be tracking how fast you were moving towards Kyoto. And you had to be on a specific leg of the trip towards Kyoto as well, I believe. And when it detects that like the stars have aligned, the moon runes are in your favor and all of that, only then does it unlock the voice track, which you can then play off the website itself, which is basically just the Ninja Research Club just talking to each other about going to Kyoto and all of. The other track itself was about 3 minutes plus thereabout, which compared to the entirety of the trip to Kyoto, which was about 2.5 hours, that's really short. I mean, it's barely enough time to jack off, to appreciate their very wonderful voice, which as a very, very nin enjoyer myself, I did still enjoy it quite a fair bit nonetheless. And if you do all of that right, it actually unlocks a separate point on the website itself, which then allows you to get a clear file of the 3 of them when you get to Kyoto itself, although you actually had to go down to claim it, which is this. The file is just so clear that like you can actually see her picking up from the back of it on the front of it, which is a little bit of a funny since it does feel like a very Isetan thing to do. I think you also get one for the return trip as well. I'll find out as I go back tomorrow, I guess. But yeah, in order to collect the clear file, you have to go down to the pop-up store, which is located in the JR Isetan Mall, which is located right above the station where the Shinkansen itself actually drops you off at. So it's actually really convenient and it makes it really easy to pick up the file unless you arrive there after 8 PM, since I think that's when the entire mall closes. As for the pop-up store itself, it was actually pretty fine. Arguably, the rest of the mall being as big as it was made it a little hard to find. The inside of the pop-up store itself was relatively simple, like you had like chibi images of them on the walls. You had all of the tapestries lining the wall as well. Well, very nice display to be honest. Really would have loved to have gotten them all, if not for the fact that each one costs about 11,000 yen, so that's a big oof. Like, I don't know man, with how expensive these full-size tapestries are, I feel like I'm gonna need to take from like Shiroko's example and like rob a bank or something in order to be able to afford all of them. So I just got one, which is the one that you guys saw. But in terms of the decorations, it's mostly that. There's a TV playing the 4th PV as well, which I get that the 4th PV is probably the best one, right? Like, I don't think many people are going to argue that it's not that good or something, since like the seriousness of the plot and the brightness of the wall setting all mixes in pretty well with that one and actually feels very hyped. So I get why they were playing it there as well. It's just that, you know, like considering the fact that there's a new PV out and that one really wasn't being played, they're just playing the 4th one on loop as well. That's still a little weird. Although, not gonna complain since it's such a banger anyways. So the thing is that the items there, some of the stuff by the time I got there on the day itself was already out of stock. Especially the Arona and Plana related merch. I think by the time I got there it was like 7:30 PM and most of that was already out of stock. So all of the rest of the stuff was still there except for those few things. It was when I got to the pop-up store as well that I kind of realized that they actually did something very interesting with the Arona and Plana dolls plush. For those who are wondering, I'm talking about these two right here. Yeah, they're still wrapped in the plastic since I don't really want to remove them from it while I'm still over here in Kyoto. So recently I heard from someone in Korea that over there isn't as much like restrictions on people scalping, especially for tickets and the like, and like queuing due to the fact that the government there kind of did a fucky-wucky with the whole thing and caused it all to be a little iffy. But down here in Japan, especially with the Blue Archive stuff, it does feel like they tend to be a lot stricter with all of this. Like, yeah, I get that, like with Comic Cat, the committee that organizes it doesn't really bother much, and with some of the other events as well, there aren't as many restrictions to stop scalpers. But with this, they actually tried to do it in an interesting way in that they actually limited the number of these plushes that you could buy per day, so each person could only buy one. That was one big thing. But they also restricted the stock per day, so when it sells out of stock one day, they'll just cut it off there, and then they will restock it the next day and sell it again. So in a way, it kind of ensures that if you were a scalper coming in from, say, Tokyo or something, unless you were prepared to stay there across like a full week to scalp, which basically means that your hotel as well as your transport costs are going to be a little more inhibitive, especially since they basically restricted the number of times a person could enter in the earlier half of the day to twice. So basically you have to go into like the Yahoo Pass market and from there reserve 2 slots for the day that you want to enter, and you were kept to like 2 slots a day. But the second half of the day you can actually freely enter, but if you wanted to get the plushes, you actually had to like get there pretty early. I would say maybe like 10 to 11. It really was a case that they ensured that there was enough for every day so that people who came on a specific period would still be able to get it. And all you really had to do was just ballot for a ticket segment, which it would seem that there wasn't really much competition to begin with, since like I only booked mine on the 1st of May for the 2nd of May, and even then there was like slots left empty for the first part. The Personally, I found that pretty cool that they actually tried to ensure that as many as people as possible managed to get the plush by just separating it out across multiple days the way that they did instead. Although it was quite unfortunate that the Arona pouch looking thing was actually out of stock by the time I got there. I think that was the only thing that never really got restocked. Everything else kind of was still in stock, although to be fair, I think today when I went back in, specifically the clear files for Umika and Izuna were out of stock, and everything else aside from the plushes were all still very readily available there, to be honest. In case you guys were wondering who were the most popular students among all of them for this event thing that went on, it was just Izuna and Omika, yes. But yeah, it actually got so bad that specifically for the two of them, for the exclusive goods that were sold at specific locations, basically the checkpoints at the scavenger hunt for the two of them, those actually ran out of stock and they were only restocked on the 1st of May, so that was actually kind of rough, since basically I had to run around multiple days just to try and secure all of it. But yeah, you heard me right, there were actually exclusive goods for each of the characters at each of the points of the scavenger hunt. And the cool thing was that, I mean, I guess maybe more cool for people who have never been to Kyoto before, but all of the points of the scavenger hunt, all 8 of them, were actually very touristy locations. Like the stores themselves where the standees were located, for some of them, they were basically just a random small store at the location itself that was willing to cooperate with the scavenger hunt. It's actually a fair amount to see here for those of you who are interested in the Toei Evangelion giant bus thing. That wasn't involved in this collab, but that's actually located in Kyoto as well. But yeah, as you can see from the giant map that I'm putting up here that hopefully is actually visible, most of the locations were fairly centrally located within Kyoto itself, with most of them being slightly north of the train station, except for some very popular locations such as the Shimogamo Shrine, which is all the way in the north, Arashiyama is all the way in the west, and so on and so forth. So there's actually a lot of traveling to be done in order to complete the thing. So I kind of get why they actually decided to do the whole splitting the scavenger hunt into 2 halves, where instead of having to do all 8 points, you could choose to just do 4, like any 4, and get the clear file, which looks like this for anyone who's curious. Yeah, I think like from the back it also, yeah, it's just a very normal backing, but from the front it does look like this instead. Which makes sense, because like some of the points are really far away. If you wanted to go through all of the points, I think going from east to west directly takes for an hour, so it's a lot of traveling to be done. Understandably, unlike the Akihabara one, where everything was located in a very small street within Tokyo, this is taking place across the entirety of a city within, well, I mean, not Tokyo, so it's smaller, but still, it's still a relatively rough travel from end to end. I get why they did it, but if you actually cleared all 8 of the points, they actually gave you this entire set of 8 Ken badges. Not sure if it's a little unclear since I have to stand really far to basically get all of them in screen without the light reflection, but yeah, all 8 of them, and if you look really closely, you can see that they're all hollow as well, as they're actually shimmering to some extent if I move the camera like this. And yeah, you actually get all of that for free if you actually decide to complete all 8 points. Although to be fair, I guess it's not so much free at that point due to the fact that you're basically putting quite a fair bit of money into the Kyoto economy from all the money spent traveling from point to point. But yeah, it's a fair exchange, I feel like. It's not too expensive traveling around within Kyoto, surprisingly enough. If you take a bus, you could basically take a bus from Arashiyama all the way back down to Kyoto Station for like 200 plus yen. The same for most of the trains as well. The maximum that you'd be paying is around there. It's a lot cheaper and affordable than traveling around Tokyo at least. Although if you're traveling short distances, it actually ends up being more expensive due to the fact that they don't really have a much smaller denominator for the train prices. Like for some of the trains there, they also run on a fixed price, so if you're traveling further, they are cheaper, but if you're traveling closer, it doesn't start at the 180 yen that it does in Tokyo, and instead it's just a flat amount the whole way through at a slightly more expensive price set to the average of like traveling the middle of the line. But yeah, as you can imagine, being the true mad lad with slight brain damage that I have, you do have it, don't try to deny it. I actually did go to all 8 points, and not only did I do it once, I actually did it multiple times. That said, there's still some stuff I really want to do out here, and I'm not staying for too long, so don't really have too much time left for that, so I'll continue the video once I get home. You guys will be teleported back with me once I do. In the meantime, you guys can sit on the shelf here and appreciate the toilet, and I'll see you guys soon. Howdy, milady. Yeah, I actually found the hat that I was looking for last video. It was a little late, but that's fine. Anyway, I figured that when we're going to go through all the different points for this stamp rally, the best way we could probably go about it is if I went through it in the order not shown on the piece of paper that had the map on it, but instead we can go through it through the order of how I went each of the points, so you guys can see the dysfunctionality of my brain as I was thinking of how best to go from point to point. So the thing is that day one I went to collect the Shinkansen collab stuff, so you might think that the first point I will go to is the one at the Isetan itself. But no, okay, you see, you're still thinking too much like a rational person, alright? You need to think like someone whose brain is as smooth as anime teddies, okay? I'm not like those other dudes. I'm someone whose brain is 5,000 light years in the future, so it isn't here right. That's not as cool of a line as I thought it would be. But I guess you could say it was technically intentional, since the final point that you needed to go to redeem the stuff was the Isetan itself, so I figured I could just come back on the day itself as the last point anyway, and it will still work out. So instead, I decided to look at the map and decide based off the location of the hotel I was staying in where was the best place to start off with. And funnily enough, I did this without even realizing it at the time, but apparently the place I booked was like a 15-minute walk away from the Manga museum, and so that was the first place I set off to. Just as I got there, there was actually a slight queue outside already, and there were actually quite a bunch of people waiting to get in, not for the Blue Archive stuff, but just for the museum itself, which was surprising. I would have thought that for a museum, people would just like casually go at any other time of the day, but no, apparently quite a fair number of people were already waiting there. Thankfully, in order to get to the standee with the QR code to scan for this stamp rally, it was relatively easy since you didn't really have to queue up along with everyone else, and most people were there to purchase tickets on the day itself, so I could just easily move past all of them, take a picture of the thing, and walk around the shopping area before going on to the next point. That said, if someone who's really interested in the history of manga and how it was made, this might be quite an interesting museum to visit due to the fact that there are many materials as well as displays they have that could pique your interest, such as some weird molds they have of all the different hands of all the different mangakas. That one feels like, you know, I get the feeling they're trying to go for the whole like Hollywood handprint thing, but somehow just the idea of like hands just holding a pen like that and just a long shelf of them feels a little creepy. Feels like something that Junji Ito might use as materials for like some horror manga about like hands coming off the wall or something like that. But that said, they also do have a lot of materials such as very old manga from around the post-war era up till today. If you're someone who's expecting to go there and see like a giant like Luffy statue or something like that, I don't recall there being many of those kind of things. For the most part, it really truly is just a museum for manga itself. So you'll find a huge collection of like tens of thousands of mangas there, displays as well as like materials that were used such as satire, manga magazines back in the day. All that kind of things you can find there, and so really it's more specialized for this type of interest rather than just like I like anime and gaming, that sort of interest. The character standee that was in the museum is for Tsukuyo. I don't know why specifically hers. I feel like having Michiru's one here would have made a little more sense since she's the one that's kind of like a little bit of a nerd that really likes like ninja stuff. So it felt like probably having her there instead would have made the most sense, but maybe there was a specific reason why they wanted to have Tsukuyo instead. I mean, the fact that the artist who drew her as a relatively popular-ish one, maybe that has something to do with it, who knows. That said, as I mentioned before, each of the points also had exclusive goods for the student that was assigned to them. So for the manga museum, you had goods for Tsukuyo, and the goods that they had were fine-ish. Like each point basically had a little acrylic stand like this where you have both the character and a background piece with the location on it. So with hers, you have both her as well as the manga museum in the background, which also at the point was a cam badge and mini acrylic keychain set. Oh, no, it's not called a cam badge, it's a tin badge. I don't know what is the word they use outside of Japan. They just call it a kanbachi. So like a can badge, I guess. But yeah, for each of the point, the goods that was sold exclusively there used the chibi art for the characters instead. There are goods that use the original art that you see in the like key visual for the event, but for those they tend to be used for the goods that were actually already being sold at the Isetan, so you didn't really have to go out of your way to get those stuff like the clear files as well as the individual character acrylic stands, the full-bodied ones as well. Although that said, they did sell those at each of the points as well, so each point basically sold all of the goods for the student with some exclusives in this. Moving on to the next point, truth be told, this was already the point where I started to get confused on the day itself when I was doing the thing. Yeah, I know, like, it's only the second point in and I was already getting confused on where to go next. And the reason for this, I guess I could put up the map, like, somewhere here or something. Remember to put it up, me. Alright, I'm watching you. And this because of how weird the location of the manga museum was. Granted, it was within walkable close distance to where I was living, but in hindsight, it actually kind of made it a little tougher to pick where to go next. I'll put it up here somewhere so you can look at the map while I look at the one in my hand. The location of the manga museum was very central, so everywhere would have taken more or less the same time. So trying to figure out a good route that would let me bounce through all the points was a little bit tough. So what I decided to go to next in the end was the Kanji museum, with the plan of going down the entire route like this. Now you might say that the Kanji museum seems like a really far off point, why wouldn't I just go to the other 2 points that were close by? Well, part of the reason was the fact that, well, it looks like it was really close and it would have been within walking distance. The truth is that it's actually not that close. I feel like the map that they gave us really undersells how big the distance is. And when you look at the lines where everything was on, it felt like it would make more sense. Now, when it comes to the Kanji museum, I actually didn't spend too much time there due to the fact that I initially wanted to go through all the points quickly, so I figured that I'll look through everything and then for the next 2 days decide where I would want to spend more time in. It's just that I ended up spending more time in every other place rather than the Kanji museum, so I didn't actually go in for too long. Which is part of why I actually felt like I really wanted more time due to the fact that even with 3 days, like, it just didn't feel like there was enough time if I wanted to explore all of the museums as well. For those who didn't know, like, kanji initially were originated from China, and they basically used the same kanji that China initially had at the time, and then over the years they modified it here and there. So even when you look at like modern day Japanese, it does have some level of connection to how kanji is written, but you also do see some level of difference. So in a way, there has been quite a long history to it. So if you're interested in all of that, then this might be something interesting to actually visit if you are. Not me though, I despise kanji. It's like, why did they have to make this language so fucking hard? I swear to fuck. Nah, I shouldn't swear too much, I shouldn't. For those who are wondering, the student assigned to the Kanji museum was Mimori. I feel like out of all of the potential students, she was probably the one that was the most fitting. This was the acrylic stand for hers. It looks really great, if not for the fact that I can't even see the Kanji museum in the background, like... like, it looks great, right? You have the, like, sakura tree blossoming. And you have like all of the olden buildings which are really tough to see in the corner here. Come on, focus. But there isn't any sign of specifically the Kanji museum itself, so I feel like they got done a little dirty there, but in terms of the aesthetics for the background, I actually do like it quite a fair bit, so I'll give it a pass, even though this might make people pass on going to the Kanji museum in the future. You didn't hear anything. And also here are the Ken badge, the 10 badge, as well as the acrylic keychain. Oh no, for hers, I guess maybe it's also because of all the pink, but it does really look quite cute overall. And like the colors stand out a little more as compared to Tsukiyo's one. From there, I then moved up north towards the Shimogamo shrine, which apparently I managed to get lost along the way. I apparently took the wrong bus and got off at the wrong station, so had to figure out another way to get all the way there. Well, there's something I actually forgot to mention, which actually felt pretty interesting, which was the fact that, unlike in Tokyo, where most of the places I go to, I would just typically go by the subway instead. With Kyoto, the bus was actually a lot more convenient, to be honest. Like, it tended in many situations to be both more accessible and to reach the points quicker than the subway. So unless you were at a very specific spot where the subway was super close by, it does seem like the bus was more convenient there, which is cool. I guess for a traditional city, you don't really have too many underground subway systems running through all of it. There were even some other interesting trains and the like there, which we'll get into a little later. But once I got there, the shrine itself was pretty fantastic, to be honest. There are 1,199, at least according to Google, UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and out of all of those, 16 are actually located in Kyoto, meaning that just one city on its own, Kyoto, already has about 1%, or slightly more than 1%, of all of the World Heritage Sites, and the Shimogamo Shrine is actually one of those. The way there was actually rather long due to the fact that you really didn't have a close-by train station, and the buses, most of them don't really get too close to it either. So you would end up near the train station either way. And then you would basically have to walk across a few bridges and through a small forest of trees just to be able to get to the shrine. And the forest itself was a very nice walk through. Like, I really did enjoy just the amount of greenery and how it was mixed in with the path as well as some of the buildings for the shrine itself. It really did make it a very beautiful sight. Even the shrine's gate itself, the Domon, was actually 2 floors tall, which it was really interesting to see, and especially so when you consider the fact that the entire forest around it has also been preserved. So unlike many other parts of Japan where the shrine is just built into the middle of like a residential complex, with this one, you did have it out still in nature, and so it was very nice and relaxing to be able to just sit down and chill in the middle of all of that. Though that said, I didn't have too much time to chill on the first day since I wanted to scout all of the points, so we went to the shrine's souvenir section, and inside there you actually did have all the stuff for... it's her. Like, I really feel like they should have just swapped the positions of Michiru and Tsukuyo due to the fact that, like, with all the trees in the background here, it does feel like, you know, Tsukuyo with her thing actually feels like she would have fit in a lot more. But yeah, it's acrylic stand. It does radiate a lot of Junko vibes with the dango and all, and you actually do get the gate in the background. It's not as obvious because of the way it's laid out, but like if you were to remove it and look at the background fully, you can actually see the entirety of the 2-story gate that I mentioned at the start. And here are the Ken badge and the keychain. Really is exuding a lot of Junko vibes. I really don't know why they chose to go with her just eating dangos. I mean, it kind of fits. It kind of does, but it just feels like everyone's other funny disabled Gehenna student. It just ended up being kind of funny. Oh yeah, also something I forgot to mention up to this point is that when you scan the QR code to get the stamp, they also give you a short like AR thing that you can do where you basically have the student on screen on your phone and you can just like position them somewhere and take a picture. Sadly, it was kind of limited in how you could do it. Like, you could zoom them in and out to make them bigger and smaller, but you couldn't like shift them around the screen, so you couldn't troll around as much. I just played around with it where I could, but sometimes I may have forgot with some of them. Hopefully I didn't. But the next point I decided to go to was the Fushimi Inari. I think that one many people probably already know. It's the one that you see in all the pictures with all of the torii gates just like stretching for miles, and you just see like the fox skull like darting in and out in like some anime or something. The interesting thing with this place is that all of those like gates that you see, each one of them have been donated by someone, because the shrine was basically patronized by many businessmen who believe that like the gods, the kami of the shrine, actually bless their businesses. So many of them made very big donations, and for each donation that was given, they basically built one of those of varying sizes. So you have the big donations by all of the merchants of old till today, all just lining the entire walkway, creating in a way a tunnel of sorts. And if you were to donate a very small amount, they do have like the mini gates that they put around the upper levels of the mountain as well. So either way, if you're someone who made a donation to it, they'll ensure to give you one of those as well, although you can't bring it home. The student who was assigned to this place was obviously the one that we all know and love, maybe, kinda. I mean, maybe it's not as obvious to those who didn't know, but the Fushimi Inari, the shrine itself, is also for Inari, whose patron animal, like the animal that typically follows her around in the lore, in the mythos, is a fox. Like, the important thing to note is that she herself was supposedly not a fox, although that is like something that many people do believe, but it's something that both the Shintos and the Buddhists both discourage the belief of, so yeah, it's a little iffy. Obviously, it was everyone's favorite. So this was the point where I first ran into like product shortage issues. Like, I actually went to the very small store which was located along the entire street of like touristy stores in front of the shrine. And when I went in and tried to purchase the stuff, apparently both the can badge as well as the mini acrylics were out of stock at the time. I guess that probably hints towards the level of popularity she had. There was another person who also had that happen, and we'll talk more about that later, but this, like, compared to the first three where there was still a fair amount of stock left, with Isetan it really was complete out. Luckily for me, however, the very nice lady at the store that mentioned that the stock would come in on the second day, so I just came back again on the second day to specifically purchase those. In fact, just to ensure that I could at least get some, I actually went there first thing in the morning, like, I think the store opened around 10 a.m. And 10 a.m. I left, 10:30 I reached there, purchased the thing and just fucked off. So here is everyone's favorite Nin Nin with the Inari shrine behind her. It doesn't show the entire line of gates, unfortunately, but it does show the main entrance of the shrine, which I feel most people probably wouldn't know what it looks like since it doesn't typically appear on like media as much because it's not as iconic as the long line that goes up the shrines. But either way, it makes for a relatively prominent looking background, especially here. I feel like if they had the long line of gates, it may not have been as easy to see within the background. So for those who know the shrine, it kind of works out still. The can badge and the acrylic key holder as well. And also, completely unrelated to the whole Blue Archive thing, for some reason, if you spent enough at the shop, they actually gave you some stuff, so... Am I pretty now, SpongeBob? This looks horrible. No, okay, I can get it to actually be where my nose and my mouth are, so... There's a part of me that does not want to do the rest of the video looking like this, but... It does feel like it'll be a bit of a meme, so we'll do this until I get a little lightheaded from the lack of oxygen and the mask, because it seems to be quite thick, so... But yeah, from there I then made the bounce trip back to the Edeon over at Shijo Kawaramachi. So Edeon is just a very normal shopping mall, and this entire one was just the very normal shopping mall as well. Like, they were selling everything from like electronics because it's Edeon to like appliances because it's Edeon. And there was also a card shop there. And so, as you can imagine, because there's a card shop there, there's only one person that could have potentially been there. That's right, the student was Tsubaki. Once again, another one where I feel like... I don't know why they chose Tsubaki of all people. Like, she just... I mean, I guess it works, right? There's camping supplies there, she loves to sleep. You get the camping supplies, you can sleep anywhere you want. Right, it's like Eurocamp, except that just sleepy all the time. It will kind of work out, but at the same time, it does feel like a little bit of a wasted potential since you could actually pay at the cash register in the card shop itself. So it does feel like Miss Moshi Queen herself would have been a little bit more fitting of a candidate, but she was at Isetan instead, so that couldn't be helped. Also at the Edeon, because of the fact that you could technically also redeem the Stamp Rally stuff there. I didn't know that at the start because I didn't like read, even though reading should be something you would think of doing when doing stuff like this. Aside from the Tsubaki standee, there was also the standees for everyone there as well, which is pretty cool since this wasn't actually located at the Isetan. The Isetan had like a... I mean, you'll see it later, but they had a very different style of decorating which did not involve all the standees, which made it kind of awkward because for some reason they decided to put Tsubaki both in the entire set of them, and also... Who are you? But yeah, for Tsubakis, they didn't actually have the mall in the background, they just had a bunch of traditional looking houses. So I feel like if they had put the mall in the background, it would have been very jarring, especially when you consider that, like, I think the building was like a 10 floor tall, like, your generic run-of-the-mill mall that you would see in like Tokyo and all like. So having something like this probably like aesthetically looks a lot better. Also, for some reason, the acrylic key holder is upside down, so we're gonna have to like finesse this a little and like... Yeah, it's not working. I was thinking of like maybe if I like spin it hard enough, she will like turn back around, but like it apparently didn't work. So next point I moved on to was Mibudera, or the Mibu temple. So Mibu is known, or it's famous for being the temple where the Shinsengumi used as a training ground back in their early days as well, if I recall. So even now, people, even within Japan, still do visit it for the whole like
Shinsengumi part of the whole thing. And as a result, the shrine souvenir shop does also sell quite a fair bit of like Shinsengumi goods. I think it actually had like a headband that had the word Shinsengumi on it as well, and a whole lot of other stuff. So obviously, because it has to do with like samurais, you guessed it. That's right, it was Fina. Haha, subversion of expectations, except this time it's because, well, it seems like the camera is subverting my expectations. Haha, subversion of expectations, because it's actually someone who was fitting this time. So you do have the shrine's main gate in the background. I feel like when it comes to shrine main gates, it would be a lot tougher for people to know without actually visiting the locations before. So in a way, the fact that all of these are exclusive to the individual locations themselves kind of does help, since it kind of eases people into like remembering why these backgrounds are the way they are, and it actually makes for a pretty cool like souvenir for each of the individual locations as well, to be honest. So it's because of that I actually really wanted one of the acrylic stands for each of the characters. Ken badge and acrylic keychain. And with that, we've actually visited 6 of the 8 locations. Here are the pictures I took with the 3 of them, in case you were wondering what I tried to do with it. And this leaves us with these 2 locations left. One was the Isetan, which is fairly easy to reach, and the other was the very far off one located all the way to the west of Kyoto. So this location, right, Arashiyama Station, is one that is fairly famous as well, due to the fact that it is right beside the mountain and there are many nature reserve-ish locations there. And there's also a small like street of very traditional buildings, and people do live in the less touristy areas close to this mountain as well. Though all things considered, I guess it makes it feel like Kyoto isn't that big when it took me maybe like 40 minutes by train to get there. By the time I got to Arashiyama Station, there was still quite a fair bit of time left, so I figured I could just like take my time to explore the area. Unfortunately, when I got there, for those who are wondering, the student who was supposed to be assigned here was supposed to be Umika, and you could actually find her in the souvenir store, like there's a random souvenir store along the main street at the station. Unfortunately, a lot like Izuna, most of the goods for her had also stocked out, so I had to also come back on the 2nd of May in order to get it at the time. Thankfully, I actually managed to do it in the end, although it really was quite sweaty, since it basically meant that I had to go from Inari Shrine all the way over in like a high-speed rush to the other end to ensure that I got all of it. So the second day was a little bit of a panicky thing in and of itself, but at the very least I managed to get all of it, so that was nice. And so because of the fact that there wasn't really as much for me to do on the first day, I kind of just walked around the area. I went to some of the parks in the area. There was the bamboo park where you have the like bamboos just rising up all around you. It actually looked really beautiful as well. Like I spent quite a fair bit of time just slowly strolling through that. There's also the Kameyama Park as well, not the Kamehameha, that's place in Hawaii, I think, but the Kameyama Park, which apparently you actually had to pay to enter, but it was fine. It was like a bit of a 500 yen thereabout. Just spent quite a fair bit of time just walking around, browsing through all of the grass, touching it a little to ensure that I don't become terminally online. The experience was great. If you're into like just walking through parks and the like, I mean, it sounds a little weird maybe to pay to go through one, but the park itself actually looked quite beautiful. But yeah, thankfully when I got back on the second day, both the acrylic stand as well as the cam badge and acrylic keychain holder set were still in stock. So I did manage to get all of it. Of course, you actually have the bamboo forest in the background, so that's actually really cool. I feel like with the bamboo park, because of how scenic and iconic it looks, I feel like it actually makes for a very interesting background that works pretty well here. For some reason, I don't know why, like Umika, oh, it's the wrong item. For some reason, I don't know why, Umika just looks like she's very smart. It might just be my imagination, but it does feel like the kind of smile that has a little bit of smugness to it that some people might talk about correction over. But yeah, that brings us through all but one, the one remaining point. It brings us back to the start. Back to the, well, I mean not the future. Back to the beginning. I think there's probably a song with that name somewhere. But yes, I mentioned slightly earlier in the video, for the student assigned to the Isetan, it was everyone's favorite. I play card games and have a very sissy smile, Kaide. Yeah, unlike with the Edeon one where they kind of put more traditional houses in the background, with this one they actually put the train station Isetan building itself in the background. So the building itself is fairly modern, which I guess in a way it kind of works with her, although like the fact that like you just have her sitting on the like this traditional bench that you typically have at the older, more traditional dessert stores, and like she's just like sitting there dressed up like this eating dangos. It does feel like it has a very stark contrast to the very modern grey looking building in the background, but yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe Isetan paid them a lot of money to have this done this way. So that's as for the can badge and the acrylic keychain, they both look like this. Yeah, she typically feels like she has a very sissy looking smile in general, but like now I guess with this it's a little more normal looking. Like it doesn't look as sus as in her normal art, so that's fine. Also, one thing I did not mention at the time was the fact that whenever you purchase I think like 3,000 yen worth of stuff at the Isetan store, they actually give you one of these collectible cards as well. These are postcards, yes. How do I touch it? The shadows will get on the card, so. Nin. But yeah, you had a card for every single one of the 8 students. The interesting thing is that I actually only have one spare set, but the one spare set was accumulated over the span of 2 days because of the fact that I kind of couldn't get the Arona and Plana plushie on the first day since it sells out very early in the day, and I kind of had to book a slot in the later day in order to get it. So I actually purchased some of the other stuff later during that instead. But even then, in spite of that, I only got 4 postcards there and I got 12 of the others on the first day. The remaining spares somehow managed to form this complete set that you see here. So that's a very, very big, interesting coincidence, I guess. And yeah, as a result, I do have this very cool looking full set here. I feel like it's a little tough for me to explain like the level of detail that's going into the art, because like some of the like patterns in the background probably just like I don't know how obvious it is, the patterns over here in the background. Also, if you spend more than 10k yen on a single transaction, they actually give you that bag that you see in the background over there. Funnily enough, they didn't actually pack the stuff into the bag itself. Instead, they gave it separately and like folded it nicely and packed it into the Isetan bag. So all of this is pretty freshly unused. And yeah, with this one, I feel like the designs in the background, like the patterns and all, are just a little bit more obvious as well. You kind of have like these like lines and patterns in the back of the postcards as well, although I'm not sure how obvious it was. But yeah, I did manage to get 2 of these as a result. But yeah, I guess that's all the stuff that you could see, get, and purchase during the stamp rally in Kyoto. Overall, I found it to be pretty fun, mostly due to the fact that I just have not been to Kyoto in so long that like all of this was also very fresh, so it was pretty cool to just walk around and like explore the area while also doing all of this. Like where possible, I tried my best to just walk instead so that I could end up walking in the back alleys. Found a few pretty interesting places to eat. I don't know if they're very touristy or if they're actually really good or not. This is just something enjoyable to do, for me at least. And so on the second and third day, I actually spent most of the time going to all of the places I missed out, like the Manga Museum, like going to Inari Shrine, and just walking up the entirety of the Fushimi Inari mountain. I did it like close to sunset and actually got up at night. The whole place looked really good. And also on the second day, I actually did another round of the entirety of the scavenger hunt. Because like one interesting thing I found out about all of the way they were holding it is the fact that they were basically GPS tracking your location at each of the points. Like they don't track it all of the time since you're using your phone's own browser. But when you get to the point and you scan the thing with the QR code, it will try to detect your location first, and if it can't detect your location, it will tell you to turn on tracking so that it can check and ensure you are nearby. And then it will basically allow you to get the stamp. So you really couldn't cheese it and just put the links up online and just paste it all into your phone while like not even going to Kyoto. Or like, I mean, it doesn't make sense to do it when you're not in Kyoto, but you couldn't just like paste it all into your phone from like some other website and just stay in like Kyoto Station and immediately redeem it multiple times. In fact, the only way you could redeem it multiple times is if you cleared your phone's cache and cookies so that all of the data that was stored was actually removed. So I actually tried doing that once. On day 2, I made sure to check, and there was still quite a lot of extras left, so I figured I might as well grab a full set. Apparently, according to them, like most people were actually really just doing 4 points and then like either giving up on just like not doing the remaining 4, or because they were doing it by bits instead, they basically did 4 collected and then came back days later to collect the 8. So there was many left for the camp badges. Which, when I heard that, it actually struck at like a little like spark in my brain. Like, oh wait, yeah, I could have just done that instead, huh? I didn't really have to like rush all the points in the same day. It never occurred to me that I could have just done that instead. So that was a little bit of an eye-opening experience. But yeah, for those of you who are hoping that I could actually do the Kyoto karaoke thing, which I did really want to do. Unfortunately, on the 3rd day when I tried to do it, I did go to a karaoke, but the internet connection there was so horrible that like OBS just couldn't. It just couldn't. So we'll have to do it some other time. Maybe not on a Maui doesn't know Blue Archive related day, but we might be able to do karaoke some other day in the future instead. So yeah, I really did enjoy the entire trip to Kyoto quite a fair bit. On the way back as well, on the train back, you actually did get a second half to the whole JR train like voice thing. Though the only annoying thing is that for some reason the whole like tracking thing, because of the fact that the JR Collab also used the tracking for the speed and the direction that the Shinkansen was going in. Like I didn't know this until the return trip, but it was also like not just measuring your speed, but which direction you're moving in. So it was very slow, and it actually took quite a fair bit of time. Like I think I spent like about 45 minutes trying to get it to work because it just refused to do its thing. But thankfully I got it to work. Unfortunately, I tried to record both, but yeah, the recording apparently failed. Like not that like it couldn't record or the page blocked out, but like even when I recorded with sound, it just didn't record the actual voice clips itself. So whatever way they were actually using to play it, apparently I just couldn't use very conventional methods to record it, so that was unfortunate. Plus, once you actually unlock the page, it only stays active for 10 minutes, so there really wasn't any way for me to try to then figure out after a workaround for it, since there just really wasn't enough time, and to even listen to the thing, there were so many conditions that had to be met as well. But yeah, that was the entirety of my trip to Kyoto for the Blue Archive collab. Thank you guys for watching. Honestly, the fact that they actually held it in Kyoto instead was really kind of funny. I remember in the original video I made where I was talking about the Blue Archive, like Akihabara Stamp Rally, I was actually jokingly saying that next time they do it across the entire city. Turns out they did do it across an entire city, just not the one that I was living in. Which, thank goodness for that. If they did it across the entirety of Tokyo, I think I really would have been completely dead by the end of it all, with how much you would have to travel around all of Tokyo itself. But yeah, for you guys who are interested, I do have, like I mentioned before, a full set of these cards, right? And I do have a spare set of the Ken badge, as well as of a single one of the clear file as well. So one of each. Like for the Ken badge, there's a full set of 8, but I guess we could like split it among everyone so that everyone can at least get one of the one that they want. The same for this, but yeah, this time around, in order to make it more transparent, like how the thing is rolling and all of that, we'll be doing the entirety of the giveaway, like rolling who gets what, through Discord specifically. So if you are not in the Discord, do feel free to join. We'll roll it from there so that everyone can see like who was getting what. This entire trip to Kyoto burned my wallet a lot more than expected, and the fact that there were so many other events happening during this period really killed most of my funds as well. I'll probably talk about all of the other events that I went to, since many of them are a lot shorter, in a separate video. Maybe I'll do like the quarterly like week event report thing, but one like a special one for Golden Week specifically, so that I can like go through all of the events that I went to during the period. With that said, thank you once again, and thank you to the following people: Ran Yakumo, Rosio, Nick Green, Kaori, John Kwon Van Dam, and Arisu for supporting the channel. If you guys want to support the channel too, you can send me support on either Patreon or PayPal. Either works, it's fine. And if you do, I'll put your name up here as well with all of these very cool people. But that said, this is me for today. Take care and bye-bye.